Chilton.
I'm Joanna Cruz.
And we wanted just to get started, we wanted to get to know you in the audience a little bit. Those of you who remember your grandmother on your mother's side, please raise your hand. Oh my gosh, almost everyone. Okay, and those of you who have children, please raise your hand. Okay.
How many of you were children? All of us, we were all children. Let's hold on to that thought. Let's hold on to the feeling of us being children.
So I wanted to start off by talking about my grandmother on my mother's side. She was an unusual character and is full of lots of stories. She was not always very well liked because sometimes she would say things that were unacceptable and it would make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. I'll give you an example. When we were celebrating her 90th birthday about 15 years ago, I was an adult. We were all there, we were all toasting her and saying how wonderful she was, and isn't it great that you've lived so long and many more years to come. When it came time for her to give her toast, she held up her wine glass and said, "I just want to say, I'm so glad I was not an abortion." My family was horrified. Myself, I thought, well, Grandma, that's a good point, and I'll tell you why. I'm the youngest of 6 children, and so when you're the youngest of 6 kids, your older siblings tell you all kinds of things like about the facts of life. And so I knew about where kids came from, and I was, at a very early age, I thought it through. I thought, no, I bet my parents probably wanted to have 3 kids. Looks like a lot of fun, beautiful children. And then I realized my mother must have made a mistake, got pregnant a 4th time, and had twins. Oh, had twins. And anybody in their right minds who would have yet another child after just having had twins, not being Mormon or Catholic or Jewish, like traditional Jewish, but anyway, there I am. I thought to myself, why? I'm at the tail end of a huge family that didn't need another child. And then I realized, well, birth is a random event. I could have been born to a different family that had less children, or I could have been born in another country. And then I thought, well, why am I not Chinese? So I realized my birth is a very random event. I could have been born anywhere. And then I thought, oh, I'm an extra human being on the earth. And for some reason I thought if I lived a long life, I'd go to the bathroom a lot, and I'd be using tons and tons and tons of toilet paper. I thought, well, I better be worth all that extra toilet paper. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is about what is the worth of a human being. What I didn't know at the time is that about 50% of children born in the United States are born because they were an unintended pregnancy. And I have to say that since the age of 5, I've been building up stamina to address a really important question that we get when we work on child hunger all the time. And that question is, why do people who are poor have children they can't feed? About it, people should be asking my mother, why did you have so many kids that you could feed? What it comes down to when you're working on child hunger is basic human worth. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Many of you who've heard us talk about food insecurity and hunger in Philadelphia and around the country, you've heard us talk about hunger as a health issue. It's a major public health crisis. So we do all of this research at the Center for Hunger-Free Communities at Drexel University, and we interview a lot of moms and and we learn about them and their little kids. And what we can do is say that hunger is bad for health. So we know that if you look at the blue bar, that the blue bar is families who are food insecure. Children who are in food insecure or hungry households are more likely to be hospitalized. They're more likely to be in poor health. And it affects their cognitive, social, and emotional development. And that is why child hunger is a massive public health crisis.
17 million children live in houses who report food insecurity. And of those 17 million, 9 million are actually little kids.
It's really hard to get a sense of the magnitude of this issue. So we figured it would be really good to help you understand how many children in Philadelphia alone and how many little kids under the age of 6 that are living at the federal poverty line and below. I'm so glad that the previous speaker talked about the Philly Stadium. The Philly Stadium can seat 44,000 people. How many children are living in Philadelphia at the federal poverty line and below? 44,000. Little kids. So next time you watch the Phillies or go to the Phillies game, just populate it with a lot of little kids in their diapers, holding their blankies, and sucking their thumbs. And then you can get a sense of the magnitude in Philadelphia alone. Okay, why is food not the solution to hunger? What's the first solution?
Raising minimum wage is the first solution.
I'll tell you why.
Sorry.
No, but you have another reason why, Joanna, just a second. First of all, of the families that report food insecurity in this country, 75% of those families with children have at least one adult that's working full-time.
If we're working full-time, shouldn't we be able to feed our children on our own?
Yeah. If families are working full-time and are still hungry, that is a form of modern slavery. That needs to end.
That needs to end.
Secondly, we need to make our work policies family-friendly. We need to make sure that families get paid sick leave, they get access to early childhood education and childcare. Those things are really important because, as I said before, children that are food insecure are more likely to be hospitalized.
So which means when our children get sick, as our friend Tiana Gaines Turner would say, one parent has to stay in the hospital with our sick child while our partners stay home with the other children who are not sick, which means we both lose out on pay, which means we have to take time off from our jobs, which boils down to how do we pay our rent, how do we pay our bills, and back to the beginning, how do we feed our children?
That's an unacceptable situation. Thirdly is grow your family, says the youngest of 6 kids. We need to grow our family. And why do we need to do that? You cannot go out there alone and think about, oh, I'm just going to go and raise the minimum wage, and I'm just going to go make sure that there's paid sick leave all over the country. We can't even do it in our own city. Our mayor won't support it. So we have to be able to convince our American corporations, and we have to be able to convince Congress that we're worth it, that people who are working are worth making a living wage, that the children who are born into poverty are worth actually feeding. And in order to do that, Congress has to understand us to be a part of the family, a part of the same human family. So, knowing that we couldn't do it alone, we went out about 5 years ago and started to grow our family. And we call that family Witnesses to Hunger.
Witnesses to Hunger is a group of women and men who share hunger and poverty firsthand. We have witnesses in Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, and Camden. We've been to state capitals and talked to our legislators and policy leaders to change a lot of policies that we have now.
Right. And in Witnesses, there's a sense of a shared humanity and having a common family. And there's a word for that. It's called comadre. Comadre is like it's like being a godmother. It's like sharing the responsibility and the privilege of caring for not only your own children, but for other people's children as well. It means like co-mothering.
Co-parenting.
Co-parenting. Sharing in the care and keeping of children together. So we're comadres and compadres. Oh. You want to talk through the photographs?
These are our children, if you follow us, which I'm sure you do. These are our pretty children, our beautiful children, our smiling faces, our happy days, wonderful days with our beautiful kids. Our neighborhoods that we live in on a daily basis, neighborhoods that need improvement, that need to be upgraded to real society for real humans to live in. And this is also what we do. We talk to our policymakers, our law leaders, our people at the Capitol. We talk to our senators. We changed laws. This is Imani talking to Senator Bob Casey at our first event.
So the women and men of witnesses take a lot of photographs of their own lives because they're the best equipped. They are the experts on hunger to speak for themselves, no one else speaking on their behalf. I want to show you one photograph, though. It was one of the first photographs that we received through Witnesses to Hunger. And it was a photograph given to me by Barbie Izquierdo. And she said, I wanted people to see what it's like to experience hunger. My neighbor, my friend, is living in a house with this kitchen with her 6-year-old and her 2-year-old. And she's living without heat and without running water. And being in a situation like this, you can see how children go hungry. Barbie was talking about this photograph that she asked her neighbor to take because she was very concerned for her and her family. She was acting out of the idea that she is a comadre, that she is sharing in that responsibility for her neighbor and her neighbor's children. And who was that comadre?
That comadre was me. I lived here with my 6-year-old and my 2-year-old. We stayed in the hospital a lot. The kids were always sick. We didn't have running water, so they always had rashes and just random illnesses and sicknesses. We spent a lot of time in the ER.
So over the time, I had the privilege of getting to know Joanna, getting to know her kids, and about her circumstances. And I asked tons of questions, as you can imagine. The first one, of course, was my running obsession. But Joanna, how did you go to the bathroom? And what about the toilet paper? I also asked, how did you cook?
On a single hot plate, a single burner hot plate with a single pot.
And then I asked, how did that make you feel? What about your children?
I was very, very depressed, very, very depressed. But I instilled in my 6-year-old, who was in school at the time, to never, ever, ever speak of anything that went on at home, to never bring up any facts that were going on at home. Because if somebody found out, they would call DHS on me and have them take my children away from me, which obviously I didn't want to happen.
Nor did I. Joanna is a fantastic mother, so proud of her children, so proud of their educations, how well they do in school, how beautifully spoken they are, how beautiful they are. Really, she's just like any other mother. I'm a mother of 3 kids, and at the time that Joanna and I were getting to know each other, my middle child was also in 2nd grade. She's the exact same age as Joanna's oldest child. So when I would think about Joanna and think about the position that she was in and hold my own children, I would think of the stress and the anxiety and the worry and concern that Joanna had for her kids. And I could feel Joanna's pain. And at the same time, I realized I'm one of the few people that knows about this situation, and so does Barbie. And it puts me in a position of, how am I going to help Joanna get out of this house? Or worse, if I couldn't get her out of the house, maybe I would have to call social services. This was an unacceptable position to be in. But you can understand what it is like when you start to recognize you're not only, if you have children, to experience what other parents feel, because you, as a parent, you can experience that. And even if you don't have children, you were once a child and needed the care and the help, not only of your family, but of your neighbors, your community, your country. About a year later, right, Joanna got out of the house. It took a few months, but she got out. She's been doing all kinds of speaking engagements, been on CNN, et cetera. But one time she gave a speech, and some people in the audience were so moved that they gave her a gift of all of these pots and pans, brand new in their boxes, and they were at her office, and Joanna came in and was very excited.
I cried. I remember that. I did cry. I was so excited for these pots and pans. It's like the best gift ever.
And I asked her, she said, well, I don't know what to do with all these pots and pans. And I said, oh, Joanna, please don't tell me, well, how is it, did you really only have one pot? And how is it possible that for so many years you only had one pot to cook in?
I only deserved one pot. I didn't need more than one. That one pot was all I needed. It's all I deserved.
That is the solution to hunger. The fact that Joanna didn't think that she deserved more than one pot makes you realize that addressing hunger is about dealing with basic human dignity and making sure not only that the people around us have that we have a sense of other people's human worth, but deep inside of ourselves, that we recognize that we're worth it, that we have value. So what helps us to build value?
Family.
To experience?
Friends. Joyous moments. Happy days. A closeness with one another. An empowerment to empower the next person to be their full potential. And this is me now.
And that's the power of family. All right, but Joanna, when we create a family, when you're developing a family and you're growing a family, you have to bring in the histories of the families that are starting to gather together. So it's only fair that I share with you something from my own family. And I want to share with you a photograph that brings me a lot of pain and a lot of shame and a lot of humiliation. So my grandmother on my father's side grew up in Alabama. And she died before I was born, but I wanted to go and just check out and see what was going on in Alabama. So I went to go and visit some cousins. And this is a photograph I took when I was 22 years old. And my cousins lived on the edge of a massive cotton field. And I said, well, what are those shacks out there? And they said, oh, well, that's where the sharecroppers used to be. So I went out and investigated, and I took this photograph through the window of an abandoned sharecropper's home. It was completely dilapidated, as you can see. This is a picture of slavery. And in this chair, you can still almost feel the slaves and the sharecroppers talking to us today. They are still with us today. And I show this photograph not to get us involved in any kind of issues of white guilt or any kind of guilt. It's about making sure that we recognize that all of us in the United States share a common history of a series of traumas, unacceptable traumas. My grandmother married a young man who was also from Alabama who couldn't stand the South and moved to New York City to become a chemical engineer when he was 20. This was in the 20s. And he was really the father of chemical engineering. And you could think, oh, I can claim that guy as my ancestor, right? Because maybe he was slightly more positive than this history of slavery and oppression and racism and discrimination. But what he did with his chemical engineering degree is he was an expert in heat transfer and created something called heavy water, H3O, which is the cooling mechanism for the atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I tell this to you because, again, in this room, there is no one that doesn't have massive traumatic history in their family histories. And as we grow a family, if you want to grow a family, you have to be able to face your own family's history, face other people, embrace others, and then move on to make history.
A lot of us witnesses come from families who were rapists, alcoholics, who were beaten as children. We will do our best not to raise these kind of people. Our families are not defined by where we come from, but the families that we are creating and the families that we are growing.
So never again is it acceptable for anyone to ask, what was the question?
If you can't feed your family, why do you keep having kids?
Right. What we have to do is when we're making our families, when we're having our children, we're recreating history. We are creating a new destiny. And as the moms and dads of Witnesses to Hunger will tell you every single time, I am breaking the cycle of hunger and poverty through my children, through having my children and creating a better world with my children and with my family. So when we get to Congress, we have to recognize that they too are a part of our family. It's hard to imagine inviting Paul Ryan in, but that's what we need to do. If we want to be recognized for our basic human worth and our basic dignity, being a part of a family, then we also have to allow people in Congress who continue to cut the minimum wage, or not cut the minimum wage, refuse to raise the minimum wage, and at the same time cut food stamps that is supposed to help feed families who are working that need to feed their families. They have got to recognize that they are having children that they can't feed. Congress currently has children they cannot feed. How is that acceptable? So that third solution, that is the primary solution to hunger.
That is the solution.
Yeah. Solidarity, friendship.
Family.
Thank you.